Let's now move on to sexual reproduction in flowering plants. Just like in animals, flowering plants have male and female reproductive system. Stamen is the male reproductive part of the flower. It consists of the anther and the filament. Carpel or pistil is the female reproductive part of the flower. The top part of the carpel is called stigma, and stigma is supported by the style. Base part of the carpel is the ovary. The anther produces pollen grains. Each mature pollen grain contains a tube cell consisting of a tube nucleus and two male gametes. Ovary contains one or more ovules. Each ovule has a female gamete. Flowers that contain both male and female reproductive parts are called bisexual flowers. Hibiscus or gumamela and rose are some examples of bisexual flowers. On the other hand, flowers that contain either male or female reproductive parts are called unisexual flowers. Papaya and watermelon are some examples of unisexual flowers. For fertilization to take place, pollen grains need to be transferred from the stamen to the stigma. If the transfer of pollen grains takes place in the same flower, then it is called self-pollination. If the transfer of pollen grains takes place from one flower to another, then it is called cross-pollination. This transfer of pollen grains is done by wind, water, insects, or animals. After the pollen grains lands on the stigma, the tube cell produces a pollen tube through the style into the ovule. The male gametes travel along with the tube nucleus through the pollen tube. After they reach the ovule, one of the male gametes fuses with the female gamete, leading to fertilization. Fertilization leads to the form of zygote. The other male gametes fuses with the polar nuclei to eventually form endosperm. The zygote divides multiple times to form an embryo within the ovule. The endosperm provides nourishment to the embryo. Eventually, the ovule develops and turns into a seed. And this ends my presentation. I hope that you learned something from me, and thank you for listening.